Welcome back, nerds. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Johnny Rogers. But before we begin, make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you love creepypastas, and let us know in the comments what your favorite superhero movie is. Now, let's get down to today's list, shall we, of the top 10 superhero creepypastas. In at number 10, Superwoman. This young lady always wanted to have telekinetic skills and even spent countless hours researching how this could be possible. She finds a comic book called Steps to Unlocking Your Hidden Powers. It goes into great detail about the steps needed to be taken for her to achieve this, and after reading through, she begins testing them without even finishing the comic. She quickly runs through the steps and then tries a simple maneuver of getting her curtains to close shut with her mind. She hears a whoosh of fabric and the curtains close. That's when she notices two glowing red eyes outside of her window. She jumps up to close the blinds and runs back to the comic, and on the last page was a photo of her dressed as a superwoman, and behind her was a demonic figure with the same red eyes. The next page shook her to her core. The text box read, "Your powers are unlocked, but your soul now belongs to me." Number 9, real life superheroes. This story tells a tale of a superhero that people only believe to exist in movies. The superheroes seem to possess real life powers and abilities, although our protagonist knew the darker side of it all. Beneath their smiles and tales of victory, he learned of their personal lives. He even goes into descriptive detail about Captain Ultra's dependency on alcohol, Madland abusing his family, and Lady Luck waking up in horrid shrieks from terrible nightmares. He finishes the story by saying that as long as the public never saw who they truly were, they would be safe. Number 8, look up in the sky. Our protagonist tells the story of his team surveying a meteor that had fallen from the sky. The team approached it, and as our protagonist was the first one to make contact, the giant rock then busted open like an egg, and inside was a torn cloth. It soon latched onto his arm, breaking through his hazmat suit and bonding with him like a symbiote. He could feel the alien cloth raiding his memories and controlling his actions. The cloth soon wormed its way around his shoulders, creating a cape that fused with his body. He was now endowed with superhuman powers that only people could dream of. The cape, however, directed his actions, allowing him to thwart many evil dictators, terrorists, and crime of any sort. Soon peace had been achieved on the planet, but the cape's mission never stopped. It longed for absolute peace. This story takes a dark turn when the cape meant for peace now directs its thoughts to peace of all kinds. The people cheering weren't seen as joyful but disturbing the peace, and even a little girl throwing confetti now plagued his mind that she was littering. Overwhelmed with thoughts of killing them, he now faces the challenge of resisting the cape's urges for destruction. Number 7, fear of victory. As many of you know, Fear of Victory is an episode of the animated Batman series featuring the Scarecrow. Except in this twisted episode, Batman takes things too far. The protagonist in the story tells us that everything was seemingly normal about the show. It featured Batman and Robin chasing after Scarecrow, although Scarecrow was a child, a scared and very ill child. They rushed after him to save him, and once they found him hiding in an alleyway, they took him back to Arkham Asylum. Batman soon visits the child Scarecrow to find him crying in his cell, saying that he never wished for this fate, and in a dark turn of events, Batman leaves Scarecrow a note saying, "Hang yourself." The protagonist is terrified watching this play out in front of him, and he can't believe his eyes. The screen then cuts to black and shows an adult Scarecrow hanging from a noose. Number 6, No Heroes. The protagonist gets a copy of Superman No Heroes, except the cover was completely black, and the Superman logo was cracked. He was also used to comic books occasionally having dark phases, but this one was more than that. The text boxes even said things like, "Life is a fatal disease, which slowly eats us away. You're not perfect. You're no hero." Superman began destroying everything in sight, leaving bodies of both heroes and villains to rot in the streets. Then, the pages that scared him the most, Superman appeared to be staring at him and said, "For years, you watched us suffer. Now it's your turn, hero." He puts down the comic and picks up a Batman one just to clear his mind. Everything is fine until he reaches a page that has a full panel of the dark Superman from the other comic. The speech bubble just says, "You don't get to be happy, hero." Number 5, The Missing Movie. This is the story of a man who, when exploring a comic book shop, finds a DVD titled The Missing Marvel Movie. The film was Spider-Man 3, but it was different. Peter was depressed and Mary Jane appeared sad and distraught. Wanting to see the movie, he continued watching to find that the movie would continuously show a sinister version of Spider-Man, and then a news clip of a tragedy. They weren't recent tragedies though, they seemed to be predicting future events. Terrified by this, he quickly shuts it off and runs to his friend's house to show them, but when he got back home, the movie was just Spider-Man 3. Number 4, does whatever a spider does. This story begins with a man who chose a life of crime, and after stealing a wallet, he finds a piece of paper inside that says, does whatever a spider does. After robbing a convenience store, he hops into a taxi, and just as he's about to rob the driver, the man puts his hand on top of his to stop him, but oddly says, catches thieves just like flies. He quickly jumps out of the cab, and while walking down the street, he hears a man playing a guitar, singing the words, spins the web, and he sighs. The criminal shakes off the weirdness and sets his sight on a rich older woman walking alone, and as he grabs her purse, she turns to him and says, look out, here comes the spud. Right then, he pulls out his gun to threaten her, and out of nowhere, something grabs his gun and tosses it out of his hand. Now terrified, he runs down an alley to escape this madness, but suddenly, he runs into a giant spider web. Now stuck like a fly, he watches in complete horror as a man-sized spider begins crawling down the web towards him. The man begins demonically singing, Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Number 3, are you happy now? This creepypasta begins with a mysterious Spider-Man comic and a fan who watches their favorite superhero go through immense pain. Our protagonist loves the early issues of Spider-Man where he's happy but still faces terrible things and manages to overcome them by being positive. He receives a mysterious package in the mail, and inside is a copy of Spider-Man, but he's never seen this one before. It's called Spider-Man, Are You Happy Now? The comic book features Peter Parker in his suit, but he has no mask. And as he turns through the pages, he notices that Spider-Man is talking to him and purposefully hurting himself because Spider-Man believes that it's what the fans want. And after tearing out his eye and stabbing himself in the arm, Parker says, is this what you want? Are you happy now? The man reading the comic begins to cry, saying out loud that it's not the fans who want this, it's the creators who have wronged you. He continues turning through the pages to then see a dumbstruck Spider-Man that just says, is that true? You don't enjoy watching me hurt? Holding back tears, he simply nods as he turns the pages to find Spider-Man saying, thank you. The creepiest part of this story isn't that it was a talking book. It's the fact that when he picked it up again to show his friends, the pages were now blank. Number 2, the lost episode. This scary story starts with our protagonist finding a VHS tape on the side of the road, and it was labeled Spider-Man the Animated Series 666. Being a fan, he thought he had already watched every episode there was. This seemed to be a lost episode, so he was very excited to see what he had been missing. Everything started normally with the usual intro, but the episode was called The Death of Spider-Man, and when it starts, Spider-Man is covered in blood, and his eyes were glowing red. Suddenly it flashes to him in the Daily Bugle, but everyone inside had been brutally murdered. What happens next would shake him to his core. He watched intently as the screen flashed and went to black, now displaying a disfigured Spider-Man on the screen who let out a blood-curdling screech. He watched in absolute horror as Spider-Man appeared to be looking right at him, slowly opening his mouth to say, you are next. Number 1, the Forgotten Spider-Man. This is about a man who purchases a strange version of Spider-Man from a comic book shop, and he loved collecting comic books and all other Marvel characters and collectibles. And when he stumbles across a demented looking Spider-Man toy, he was in complete disbelief. Although the toy was different, it was completely red, its webbing pattern was disorganized, even the spider on his chest was crooked and it looked like a real spider. The toy actually came with the comic as well. The comic was called The Forgotten Spider-Man issue number 0. When he got home, he put the toy on his shelf and began reading his new comic. It started normally with Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider, but something was different. When the spider bit him, blood gushed from his arm, sending him into a murderous rage. As he looked up in disbelief, his toy on the shelf was now in a crouching pose and appeared to be staring at him. He kept reading as the comic became even more gruesome, with Spider-Man killing MJ, then Uncle Ben, and then Aunt May. He quickly researched the comic book to discover this copy was written by a man who wanted a sinister version of Spider-Man but had died due to exhaustion while making it. When he returned to his living room, the Spider-Man toy was missing missing, and so was the comic book. That's when he heard a voice in his head say, "Till next time, true believers." And he receives a knock at his door, and there was a package waiting for him. And when he opened it, it was a copy of the Forgotten Spider-Man issue number 1. And that has been the top 10 superhero creepypastas. For more videos like this, click the playlist on the screen, hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe, of course. Plus, let us know down in the comments which one you loved the most. From Top 10 Nerd, I'm Johnny Rogers. Until next time, take care.